This painting might not look that familiar at first glance, but did you know that it was called the greatest painting in the world for over 3 centuries? Yes, when you asked anyone in the Western world between 1520 and the mid-19th century what the best painting was, the title of this work would have been their answer. It was painted by Raphael, the Renaissance painter who completed some of the most dramatic and ambitious works in art history. It's titled The Transfiguration, and unfortunately for him, it was the final painting he touched before his dramatic demise at the age of 37. But behind the beauty and brilliance of this painting lies a story of ambition, legacy, and a last chapter that no one could have scripted. I already talked about the rivalry between Raphael and Michelangelo, as they were both working in Rome at the time. Another episode about this can be found in my video about Raphael's world-famous School of Athens, a fresco that tells an equally intriguing story. The tale of this painting adds another chapter to this remarkable rivalry, as you'll discover later in this video. First, let's rewind to the year 1516, when Raphael was 33 years old and already one of the most celebrated artists in Europe. He was painting the Pope's apartments at the time, an incredibly prestigious project for the young master. Around the same time, he became the lead architect of St. Peter's Basilica, while simultaneously directing a vast workshop filled with loyal assistants. And just when it seems like his plate couldn't possibly be fuller, Cardinal Giulio de' Medici, the future Pope Clement VII, gives him one more job. This time, a grand altarpiece for the Cathedral of Narbonne in southern France, where the cardinal was working in the second decade of the 16th century. Raphael agrees, but instead of delivering a typical serene image of Christ, he decides to create something far more ambitious. But why? He hardly had to make a name for himself back then, as he was bound to become the greatest painter the world had ever seen. Let's dissect this painting so we can figure out why people thought this was the most famous painting in the world for well over 3 centuries. As you surely expected, Michelangelo once again played a crucial role in the story. Raphael decided not to paint one, but two dramatic biblical moments from the Gospel of Matthew, and merged them into a single monumental painting. The top half of the canvas depicts the transfiguration of Christ, when Jesus appears in radiant glory on Mount Tabor before 3 of his disciples. His arms are outstretched, his face illuminated, and he floats in the sky flanked by Moses and Elijah, 2 figures from the Old Testament. Below them, Peter, James, and John collapse on the rocky mountaintop, shielding their eyes from the brilliance that overwhelms them. It's peaceful, and I like Raphael's use of light here, but let's be honest, it's also a bit too dramatic from a modern perspective. But as our eyes travel down the painting, everything changes as the subtle light fades. The bottom half of the painting is chaotic, loud, and full of human struggle, a perfect representation of life on Earth. A possessed boy's arm is reaching for the heavens above in anguish, his body contorted and his eyes rolling back in terror. His father tries to support him, while his mother reaches out in desperation, her arms extended, her face pleading for help. Around them, the apostles argue and gesture helplessly, some pointing, others staring in frustration, as they are clearly unable to heal the boy. It's not just the contrast between light and shadow that makes this section powerful, but also the emotional collision between revelation and confusion. Now here's the clever part. Raphael wasn't just showing off, he was making a point. By combining the heavenly transfiguration with the earthly exorcism scene, he creates a bridge between glory and suffering. But there's more to it, as this wasn't exactly the exorcism that Raphael intended it to be. Interestingly, modern historians believe that the boy wasn't possessed at all, but was likely experiencing an epileptic seizure. This was obviously something that was barely understood in Raphael's time, but it's visible in the twisting posture and clenched hands. What's even more remarkable is the expression on his face, which seems to shift from agony to release. This is a sign that the boy had just been cured. which would have been interpreted in the early 16th century as a miracle. It's not a harmonious scene in the typical Renaissance sense, but I'll come to this later. Let's remember this though, because what Raphael achieved was nothing short of incredible if you know the full story. Raphael died in 1520, and the painting was completed that year, so you might be wondering if Raphael really finished all of this himself. And the answer is probably not. On his 37th birthday, the painting wasn't yet completed. His assistants, including Giulio Romano, likely helped finish the lower figures, working from Raphael's sketches and instructions. But make no mistake, the composition, the symbolism, the dual narrative, everything that made this painting the most famous in the world for hundreds of years is unmistakably Raphael's design. And when he lay on his deathbed, the Transfiguration stood right next to his deceased body. Thousands of visitors came to mourn the Renaissance superstar, and they found themselves face to face with the final masterpiece he left behind. Technically, the painting is staggering as well, but that's no surprise. After all, Raphael was an incredible artist. The use of color is refined, and it's almost as if the divine glow surrounding Christ seems to radiate from the canvas itself. Another interesting fact is that, although it was originally destined for France, the painting never left Rome after Raphael's death. Instead, it remained in the city, quickly becoming the crown jewel of the papal collection. For centuries, it hung in churches and palaces, admired by pilgrims, scholars, and rival painters alike. In fact, French painter Ingres was so obsessed with it that he copied it repeatedly, trying to absorb Raphael's genius stroke by stroke. So what's the secret that makes the Transfiguration so great? Raphael painted a vision where heaven doesn't exist separately from human struggle but hovers directly above it. That message would have felt especially powerful in 1520, a time when Europe was racked by religious division and disease. And let's not forget, Raphael died during a pandemic-like outbreak himself. But there's another layer to this story, one that involves the rivalry that I talked about earlier. You see, Cardinal Giulio de' Medici wasn't exactly the quiet type when it came to commissions. While he asked Raphael to paint the Transfiguration, he also commissioned another altarpiece from Sebastiano del Piombo for the same church in France. This second painting was supposed to show the raising of Lazarus, and by 1518 it was completed and well on its way to being delivered. Raphael learned that none other than Michelangelo had made the preparatory drawings for this altarpiece, and this somehow got to the young painter. Suddenly, what might have been just another commission became something more, a quiet contest between two of the greatest artists who have ever lived. We know that his original design for the Transfiguration was much simpler. A modello, or preparatory oil sketch, that survives today shows an early version of the painting, with far fewer figures and a much less elaborate composition. Raphael added an entire second story from the Gospel of Matthew, where Christ descends from Mount Tabor and divinely heals a possessed boy. For centuries after Raphael's death, the Transfiguration was admired by millions of people. Art historians, critics, and painters across Europe considered it the pinnacle of Western painting. It wasn't hanging in a dusty chapel, but it was showcased, spotlighted, and studied obsessively. From the 16th all the way through the 19th century, if someone asked what the greatest painting in the world was, this was the answer. It doesn't hold this kind of aura anymore, and unless you're an art enthusiast like myself, you might have never heard of it. A copy hangs above the altar of St. Peter's Basilica, and a copy of the raising of Lazarus hangs at Narbonne Cathedral. You can admire the original works at the Vatican Museums and the National Gallery in London, respectively. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next video.